How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm fine.
Yeah.
So let's get started. I'll give a brief introduction of myself.
Mhm.
So I'm Amrapali, and I have been working with Infosys since the past 2 years. I have around 2+ years of experience in Salesforce,
Okay.
and yeah, that's it about me. So can you tell me about yourself, something?
Yeah. So I have been working with Accenture since 2.7 years. Uh, One more thing that is common between us is like I got offer from Infosys, so
Okay.
I'm going to join Infosys soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Uh, so maybe so you want me to talk about my work experience?
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. So I've done all the admin stuff like profiles, roles, permission sets, and all the OWD. And I worked on configurations like page layouts, record types, flexi pages. Uh, I worked on customizations like Apex, synchronous and asynchronous, Lightning. Um, I have basic knowledge on integration and LWC, but I don't have any hands on it.
Okay. So, can you rate yourself in development and admin
Yeah,
out of 5?
out of five. Okay.
Yeah.
So I would say in admin, I would rate myself a 4 out of 5 and 3.5 in development.
Okay. So I'll start with the admin part and then I'll move on to development questions.
Yes.
So, can you explain to me briefly about the security model of Salesforce?
Yes. So we can provide security using profiles. So we can able to define object level security and some system permissions using profile level. Um, so when it comes to roles and OWD, we can able to control the visibility of the data using roles and um, sharing settings.
Okay. So I'll give you a scenario-based question.
Mhm.
Suppose we are having a role hierarchy. So we are having a manager, and the manager, under the manager, there are some team leads, and under the team leads, there are some developers. Okay.
Yeah.
Consider the account object. So uh, I want that the managers should not be able to see the records of the TLs and the developers. How will I be able to achieve this?
Okay. So you don't want to allow manager to see team leads and developers records, right?
Yes.
So in that case, you can create a profile separately to manager, and you want to keep the access on that object to the manager.
Yeah, access is there for the manager, but
Mhm.
since it's in a role hierarchy, the manager can see the records of the TLs and the developers, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And I want the manager to not see the records, but I want the role hierarchy to be there. Is it
okay.
possible to do that?
So there will be one checkbox, right? Grant access using role hierarchies. We can uncheck that for that particular object.
Mm. Okay.
Mm.
So I'll move on to the next question.
Yes.
So, what is the difference between profiles and roles?
Yeah, yeah. As I said earlier, the profiles will deal with like permissions of objects and other things in the Salesforce, and whereas come to roles, these roles are more control on the visibility of the data.
Okay. Okay, fine. So, what is the difference between like what are record types? Why do we usually use them?
So, for example, if you have two teams for like sales team and marketing team, so if you want to present them with different fields, set of fields to them, then we can use record types. Using the record types, we can create different page layouts and assign those page layout to that record types. And
Okay.
um, we can assign different set of fields to different users.
Okay. Okay. So can you tell me about the different automation options we have in Salesforce?
Yeah, we have workflows, process builders, and flow builders.
Okay. Can you explain to me about the differences? Like when do we use what?
Yeah. So in workflow we have one action like outbound message, which is not available with process builder or flow. So in that case, when we want to make a call to the external system using the out of the box functionality, then we'll go for workflows. And in process builder, we have more features compared to workflows. Like we can post a charter and call Apex class, and there are multiple features that are not present in workflows. In that case, we'll go for process builders. And in flows, if we want to, if we want any interaction from the customer, so if we want to get any data from the customer, then we go for flows. In the flows, we can able to present screens to the user.
Okay. Okay. So suppose I have a user and the user is a manager in an organization. Okay.
Mhm.
And that user is leaving tomorrow. Okay.
Mhm.
So before that, I want to do some cleanup activities like remove him from the role hierarchy and take care of the records owned by him or shared to him.
Mhm.
So I don't want that person to log in into the system from tomorrow.
Mhm.
What can I do?
We can freeze his user, or we can inactive uh, user.
Okay. Okay. So, okay, one more question. So, suppose you are owning an account record, okay? So, you are the owner, okay? And you have manually shared that record to suppose two other people,
Mhm.
okay? Now, in the future, we change the record from from you to some other user, okay? So, the owner is some other user right now for that record.
Yes.
So will that record be still be shared to the other two people?
Mm, I believe that it will be shared still.
Okay. So okay. So now I'll move to the development part.
Mhm.
Uh, so can you explain to me about collections in Apex and why do we use them?
Yeah, so when we processing when we are writing, for example, a trigger or class, it is better to make that class work for bulk data instead of a single record. So in that case, we'll go for collections. We have set, list, and map type of collections in our Salesforce.
Okay. So can you tell me differences between them? Like what are they?
Yeah, list is like order collection, whereas set is unordered collection. Set don't allow duplicates. List will allow duplicates. Whereas come to map, it is key and value based. Based on the key, we can able to here key will be unique, and
Okay.
value can be duplicated.
Okay. Um, so tell me some of the best practices that we follow during writing triggers.
Yeah, so one trigger for object, and uh, we can use trigger handlers, and we can use some static variables to avoid recursion, and we should not allow write queries and DML inside the for loop, and we should not hard code ID values and all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any knowledge about custom settings and custom metadata?
Yeah, I have.
Okay. So, can you tell me like why do we use custom settings and custom metadata?
Yeah. So when we want to have some data which should be unique, um, like some configuration type of data, so then we go for custom settings and custom metadata. So when we are using custom metadata, we no need to write a query. We can able to get the data using a method, so we can avoid these governance limits, but there is a limitation for the size of the data that we can insert into these objects. Whereas come to custom settings, so custom setting is like similar to custom object only, but it won't obey, it won't be having any validation rules or triggers. uh, yeah,
Okay.
these are the major differences.
Okay. So, shall I ask you some basic things about integration?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So, what is the difference between authentication and authorization?
So authentication is like we validate whether the user is genuine or not. Like it may be like username or password or security token. Using that details, we validate whether that user is valid or not. That is authentication. Authorization, like once we validate that user, allowing that user to access our data.
Okay. So I'll give you a scenario and you just tell me an overview of how you will implement it. Okay. So suppose I am having an external system. Okay.
Mhm.
Suppose we are having Google API. Okay. And
Yeah.
that is a secure API following REST. Okay. And I want to do a call out from Salesforce. Okay. I want to do a call out and I'll get some data from that API.
Okay.
So how are you going to implement this? And also tell me the process which is happening, the
Okay.
integration process.
Okay. So in this case, I'm going to make a call out to the external system using the URL address of that REST class from the external system,
Okay.
in which I'm going to use we can use get up post method in this case. So if we are using a get method, the parameters will be passed in the URL, and if we are using a post method, then the parameters will be passed in the body of that method. So, so, so what we have to do, we have to create a record, right?
No, not create record, like just I just want to hit that API. I'll have an API, Google API. The data I'll get, I just want to do debug. Uh,
Okay.
so
Yeah. Yeah. So we put that address of the external system in the endpoint URL, and we set our method. And if we want to pass anything in the body, we can add in the body, and then we can send the request using the response class of the HTTP. Like,
Okay.
yeah,
So, how are you going to manage the life cycle of OAuth? Like, how are you going to manage the access token and refresh token?
yeah. So for that, we can use OAuth intermediate service, which acts as the intermediate between the external system and Salesforce. So when we that will be having a particular URL address, so we can hit that URL. So with the client ID, client token,
Okay.
and username and password. If
Okay.
we provide all these details, it will validate whether you are a valid user or not. If validation is successful, it will provide us the access token. Using that access token, we can able to hit the external system only once.
Okay. So, why do we use a refresh token?
Yeah, so if you want to extend that session for one more request, then we use request.
Okay. So, you're saying that using refresh token, we can like just do it like once we use access token and then we use refresh token.
Yeah.
And after that, suppose I want to make another request again, then what will I do?
Um, I'm not sure actually. I think we have to hit what again to get the access.
Okay, fine. So, can you tell me the order of execution in Salesforce?
Yeah. System validations before triggers, custom validations, duplicate rules after triggers, then workflows. In the workflows, if there are any update actions, again it will perform before and after triggers. Then process builders. In the process builders, again, if we have any updation, then again we'll go for before and after triggers. Um, Before workflows, we have assignment rules and auto response rules. After that, workflows, triggers, process builders, before and after triggers. After that, uh, escalation rules, then roll up summary. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So, I'll give you a scenario. So, suppose I'm having consider account record, okay? So in the account record, on the account name, we are having some validation rule. Like for example, the account name should not contain any alphanumeric characters, okay?
Yeah.
Now I'm having a workflow, okay?
Yeah.
And that workflow is changing that account name and it is including a special character, like an alphanumeric character, okay? So a special character, consider.
Okay.
So, uh, what will happen?
So actually,
The record,
yeah, workflow rules bypasses validation rules. It won't consider. So there won't be any validation error.
okay. So, tell me something about the like what is asynchronous processing? Can you tell me? Why do we use asynchronous processing in general, not in Salesforce?
Okay. So if we want to execute anything um, in the future when the resources are available, then in that situation we'll go for asynchronous.
Okay. So in Salesforce, what are the various asynchronous processes we are having?
Yeah, we have batch classes, future methods, schedulable, queuable.
Okay. So give me some pointers about each of the like each of the processes. When do we use them?
Yeah, so when we want to process deal with more than 50,000 records, then we'll go for batch class. And in future methods, if we want to make any calls in them. Um and
Sorry, can you? Can you tell me the point that you just said?
So they don't allow like asynchronous calls in triggers. So in that case, we can go for future method.
Okay.
Yeah.
And schedulable and like what is the difference between queuable and future?
Yeah. So in future, only primitive data types are allowed, and if we want to pass any object records, object data, then it is not allowed. We can pass that thing in queuable, and we won't get any current job ID from the future methods, whereas we can get that in queuable. And we can't change the future methods, like one from one future method we can't call the other future method. In queuable we can do change.
Okay. So suppose in the future method, I want to pass some object records, like somehow I want to pass. Like I want to get the objects in that future method. So how will I be able to do it?
uh, in future method we can pass collections, so we can able to pass a list of IDs of that particular records. Using those IDs we can make a query in the future method to get those records.
Okay. What if I don't want to query inside the future method? Then can you think of any other solution?
Mm, no, I'm not getting it.
Okay. Uh, so um, so tell me uh, what are the various OOPS concepts that you know about? Like explain any two of them to me.
Okay. Give me a second. So like method overriding and overloading, uh, and
Uh, these are uh, these are not OOP concepts exactly. So these are like implement like you these are you can say examples of OOPS concepts. So uh,
yeah. uh,
something like okay, so you can tell me about inheritance and abstraction, both of these concepts.
okay. Inheritance is like if we want to implement one class to another class, then that is called like if we want to use any child properties in the parent, then we go for inheritance. By implementing um, we can achieve this.
Okay. And
Uh,
what about abstraction?
yeah. So abstraction is like wrapping up of uh, data into single unit. So we can say like classes are example for that.
Okay. So in Salesforce, in the declarative part, like in the admin part, okay, can you give me one example of inheritance? Or you can say, like in the Salesforce platform, one example of inheritance which is built into the Salesforce platform.
Like role hierarchy, I can say like parent roles can able to access the data of child roles.
Okay, perfectly fine. And what about abstraction? Any example?
Uh, I can say profiles like we are having data in it and we are not showing that to outside. I'm
Okay.
not sure.
Uh, so I ask you a few basic questions about LWC.
Mhm.
So first, tell me why LWC? Why did Salesforce introduce LWC? Why not Aura? Aura was working perfectly fine. So why did they introduce LWC? And what are the benefits of LWC over Aura?
Yeah. So to work with Aura, we should know the this framework, Aura framework. So if we know any core like HTML, Angular, we won't be able to work with Lightning. So we have to learn Aura framework. So to avoid this thing, Salesforce come up with LWC where we can use any core technology like HTML, Angular, this kind of UI technologies. We can build our components on top of those.
Okay. Uh, 1 second. Okay. So the time is over.
Yeah.
So I'll just start with my feedback.
Hmm.
So first of all, uh, some of the questions that you answered were a little a little wrong. Okay, so I'll tell you about that first.
Hmm.
So one of the questions that I asked you about the role hierarchy, like I don't want the managers to see the TL and the developers see the records, and I talked about account object, right? And
Hmm.
you said that we should
Yeah.
pick it off, right?
Yeah. We cannot control that on standard.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. So that should be the answer. In standard object, we cannot do that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And second thing, I would suggest in integration, like you can brush up your knowledge. So, like integration, like because what happens is like during interviews, if you say something that you're having like very basic knowledge about and you're not able to explain, then it is a negative point to the interviewer. So I would suggest that you go through the integration concepts better, like what is OAuth and what is REST and what is the basic process, because this is nothing related to Salesforce. It's a general integration process. So I would suggest you to brush up on that.
Hmm.
And third thing about OOP. So I would also suggest you to brush up your OOPS concept. So what you said about inheritance was perfectly fine, but you mixed abstraction and encapsulation.
Okay.
So the definition you said it was for encapsulation.
Okay.
So I would suggest you to go over that as well.
Hmm.
And I would suggest one more thing, like when I asked you about asynchronous processes, right?
Yeah.
So you just said that these are the four processes available.
Hmm.
So I guess that rather than just telling what is available, when the interviewer is asking something, so you should also try to elucidate at the same time. So basically, like you said, so we have future methods, and this is used for this. Then you go for queuable and whatever order you want, but just try to elucidate a little more, because sometimes the interviewer would like to, they will just ask one question and they will expect you to, like, maybe they will expect you to tell the things that you know about it
Yeah.
without they asking you. Okay. And rest of it was like completely fine. And maybe I'll give you one more suggestion which I follow myself in interviews. So you should try to explain things with examples. So rather than saying some normal definition, you can back it up with some example or a scenario. It doesn't have to be a Salesforce based scenario. It can be any scenario from your real life as well.
Yeah.
So I'll try to explain you with an example. So I asked you about record types, right?
Yeah.
So in record types, you said that if we want to have two page layouts and everything, so that was completely fine. That is completely fine. But you could have backed it up with an example as well. So one example which I use might be Like, suppose we deal with customers, our company deals with customers as well as we deal with companies as well. Okay.
Yeah.
So, in case of customers, for their identity, we have their name, we have their Aadhaar card, maybe we have their age, and we have their maybe gender. But in case of a company, we have maybe a GSTIN number, the company name, and the strength of employees of that company. So in this case, both of these are account records, but we need different information for them. In this case, we will use record type. So, it basically strengthens your explanation and it strengthens your knowledge as well. That like you actually know the depth of it, and like you can do this for other things as well. So yeah. So that's all. Rest of the things were perfectly fine. You did really well.
So thanks for that, Peter. Definitely, I will work on the points that you highlighted.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. The interview goes really good. If you really attend any real time interview, no one would dare to leave you with your good knowledge on Salesforce platform. So all the best to you, brother. Hope this mock interview would have helped you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for conducting this drive.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Bye
Thank
bye.
you for coordinating.
Yes. Have a great day. Bye bye.
Have a great day. Bye.